Hello, everyone. So, today we have our new guest with us, a strategy consultant. Jennifer is an internationally recognized influencer and specializes in leadership and innovation. She is the president and founder of Agility Triad, a leadership development company. She is co author of Strategy Leadership and the Soul and Upstate Founders Playbook. Hatch a Better World named her in top 100 innovative thinkers in 2013. She has been a speaker at several prestigious platforms, including United Nations Social Innovation Summit and so on. Her work has been mentioned in Harvard Business Review and Forbes. I welcome you, ma'am, from the whole Bloggers Alliance family, and thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, ma'am, like you are a founder of Agility 3R, a leadership development company, which helps making leaders more resilient. So, can you please tell us more about it, what it is all about?
For sure. Thank you. Yes. So I started out, I got my degree in existential philosophy and had several jobs in leadership, and then decided to do my own thing in the year 2000. First of all, I was doing employee and customer satisfaction surveys, and then Thomas Friedman had written the book, The World is Flat. And why that was such a profound book for me was that it made me realize that although people may be doing great in their surveys, employee satisfaction and customer satisfaction, that those numbers really had nothing to do with what was going on or the future. And so I remember the moment that I renamed the company from Customer Service Alliance to Agility 3R, because I was flying back from a conference, and I don't know about you, but when you get those downloads of information, your body just is so excited and you write so very fast. But I was sitting on an airplane, and the woman in front of me had actually been coming back from a funeral. And so she was asking me to be more still. And I was trying to respect her space, as well as the fact that I was getting, the question that I asked myself is, if I was really to help businesses, rather than, how to help them report their scores, if I wanted to help them be able to compete, what would I have to be able to help them do? And it literally, I have to say, no thinking was required. It literally was a download. You have to have them be more agile. And so, and this is again 2005, before agility as a platform and agility as IT was kind of mainstream. And I said, well, it should be agility. And Agility 3R, the 3 R's are resilience, responsiveness, and reflection. And it's because I literally asked the question, if I were to help companies be more able to be agile, what would they have to be? And that was just simple. They had to be resilient, they had to be responsive, and then they had to be reflective. Resiliency has more to do with, when a single-celled amoeba had more information, it had to grow into a double cell. And, it's ultimately ending up in a human being with many, many cells because there's so much information. So when I think about resiliency, it is about being able to bounce back after failure, but more than that, it's about connectivity and about expansion. Responsiveness really is about attention. How well does it listen? How well does it, how accurate is it in actually being able to be in the pulse of the presence? And then reflection has to do with pattern recognition, and it has to do with foresight. If you're moving too fast, it's hard to see patterns. And so, so those are the three distinct R's that make up Agility 3R. I've been lucky. I've now, I've been in business for 22 years, and I have been resilient. So.
Great, great idea behind resilient and responsive and reflective. Great, I just loved it. And ma'am, you are also adjunct faculty at Rochester Institute of Technology, New York. So you focus more on innovation. So what is all about your work in this university, in this thing?
Yeah, and I need to be clear, I'm an adjunct professor. We were very lucky that the school at Rochester Institute of Technology, and again, it's, I think, one of the top 10 schools in the nation relative to IT A lot of the students end up working on at Pixar. They do an incredible work with animation. They also have in the United States, the best school for the hearing impaired. And so I think I'm really lucky to be part of Rochester Institute of Technology. The school that I teach for is called this School of Individualized Study. So it's called SOIS. And what I think so remarkable about this particular school is that it really helps students that don't fit kind of mainstream, help them curate a path of their own, right? So I honestly think that, I believe in the future that at least half of the students that come forward are going to want a self-directed learning model. I do believe in higher education, and I do believe that people need an undergraduate at least. But the idea that a syllabus can teach you what you need for your emerging future, I think that is no longer true. And the fact that that students can actually create their own path. I think of my son. I have a 15-year-old, and he's such a learner, but he's learned how to navigate the internet in a way in which, through YouTube videos and other courses, he can patch together his curriculum. So I do think that SOIS is the place to be. We have what we did learn is that students sometimes with an open slate are a little overwhelmed. And so what we started doing is curating groups of classes together. So like a bundled class. So your undergraduate degree might be a series of 3 bundles in pieces that, like a jigsaw puzzle you put together. So we have an innovation minor in the school. And so my teaching is in that track. I teach 2 classes. One is called Exploring Innovation. And what we do is a survey of the history of innovation, as well as look at Clay Christensen, The Innovator's Dilemma, and then Whiplash. One of my students is actually using The Innovator's Dilemma, but I have Whiplash here, and it's really about how to survive our faster future. So between having kind of a classical book about innovation and then kind of a book about crowdsourcing and all the ways that the internet has impacted the speed of innovation, those 2 as classical texts, I think, are really important for the students. And similar to what I did with Agility 3R, is I took 3 words and created themes around them. So my students actually have the assignment to define innovation, and they have to come up with 3 themes, and then they have to describe those 3 themes. And so here's another one. The idea of being able to have a student define innovation and then come up with a way to kind of declare it and describe it. My hope is that in doing that, they have a better sense of their identity, and then can maybe choose jobs that kind of bring their definitions of innovation to life. I've been teaching that for 4 semesters, and it's been very, very fun. For any of you that want to be adjunct professors and know, like, the first year is like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm teaching this. The second year is like, oh, well, that didn't work. Let me try something new. The third was like, cool, I have a solid program. And the fourth is really like, this is a blast. The other class that I teach is an innovation lab. And what we do is we take a look at the business models of Fast Company's top 50 companies. And we kind of look at what makes those distinct 50 companies so unique. And then we play a business innovation game where people decide to run a company and learn about the trade-offs that are made and why it's so hard for companies that are successful to innovate, right? Is because they end up hiring people and then having kind of a lot of overhead, and innovation, true R&D, research and development, really does not create a return on the investment. And so, companies that are disciplined will always choose a budget for R&D and overhead so that they don't have the, the challenges that they have. So anyway, it's a lot of fun. I love the students. I just think, I don't know about you, I'm a Generation X person. I'm in my 50s, and I just think that the students that are, 18 to 25, I think they have such a great grasp of reality and internal sense of how to navigate complexity, and truly brilliant students.
Great, ma'am. Very interesting. And as truly said by you, that we should create our own path instead of going through the syllabus, and how you teach students and help them by teaching them about innovation and things. Great. It's very interesting. And ma'am, also you are a community director of Mars Startup Studio. So can you please share with our audience what is your experience working with different startups?
Oh yeah, no, it's fantastic. So so Rochester, New York right now, we are an innovation hub. We within a 90-mile radius, there are 19 colleges and universities. And so when you do the math of their actual like how many students are at those schools, you come up with a number 800,000, right? So we have 800,000 students within a 90-mile radius. And one of the challenges is that when people think of New York City, or when they think of New York, the state, they think of New York City. Upstate New York is actually 6 hours away from New York. So I have friends all the time that like, oh, I'm in New York, come and visit and have some coffee. I'm like, it's 6 hours away. so one of the things that we have to do in upstate New York is we have to really do a great job of storytelling and really work on how to get more venture capital into the region. Why Rochester is such a great place is that literally you can drive anywhere and be there in 20 minutes. And also the housing is quite stable. And so it's really a great place for people to actually have families and have access to really actually nationally ranked education, which is great. And so what we are hoping with Marl is that more companies will actually think of Rochester to expand. And that more and more ideas, if you think of 800,000 students, so many of them are going to have great ideas, but not all of them are going to be technologists, right? I think there's a perception that to be an innovator, you have to be an IT or you have to be a technologist. And I think the issue is there are so many technologists around that the issue is how do you get your idea into a map, just like a combination lock has, how many turns to the right, how many turns to the left, and there's just 3 numbers. You can't get access to that lock unless you know those 3 numbers, but it's only 3 numbers, right? So success in business is very similar. There's a pattern, there's a language, and if you know the pattern in the language, you can open the lock of funding, right? And so the Startup Studio is really designed to help have greater access to more ideas, helping those ideas get some traction into that kind of combination lock of here's the framework, business model, canvas, all these elements that are pretty standard for most businesses. And then help them get to a point where they can participate in some of the other startup activities in the community. And so what I like to think of it as building a bridge between the Silicon Valley and Rochester, New York. And our logo is quite beautiful because it shows this Frederick Douglass, Susan B. Anthony bridge connected to the Golden Gate Bridge, which is just a bridge that everybody knows. And some people may not know, but Frederick Douglass and Susan B. Anthony, just probably one of the 2 best known advocates in civics, were worked in Rochester, New York. And so the idea of economic inclusion and getting access for more people, to me, that bridge is symbolic of the history of Rochester. It's symbolic of the future of Rochester, and it incorporates both culture and money.
Great, ma'am. Great. And I really love the example of that lock combination pattern with business model.
Oh yeah, it's so true. I mean, in so many things, I just ask you that if you're doing something new, think of it as, I wonder what will unlock this something new. And then find the formula. And that's the hardest thing, is follow the formula. When you have something great and new, the hardest thing is to balance the newness with the existing structure. The existing structure will unlock the resources for your idea to thrive. But I think that I'm in my 50s, like I said, and I think it took me 20 years failing to follow a plan and a pattern that I was probably given early on. But I thought following the plan would diminish the ingenuity. And it took me a long time to realize that it would actually allow the ingenuity to thrive.
Okay. And also you have written an epilogue to the book Heroes Amongst Us, which is written by Dr. Amit Nagpal. So
Yeah.
yeah, so we'd love to know about it also. Like, what is the thing in?
Yeah, let's see. Let's see back. Probably, yeah. So here's the Heroes Amongst Us, which is great. And I think early on when I had written Strategy, Leadership, and the Soul in 2010, Dr. Amit was one of the first people to read it and review it. And we've built quite a friendship around that, because there was also, I think, we had also participated together in a personal branding, storytelling, and beyond, which I think the early work that we did resulted in the Bloggers Alliance, which is what you're a part of, which is fantastic. The work I did in that was really about my own personal story, and kind of the struggles that I had with for the last decade, at least, the whole concept of well-being and well-being being part of a corporate conversation is new and right? That mindset matters for great productivity and doing all of that. So both in personal branding and storytelling and beyond, and the Heroes Amongst Us, I think it was really writing very personally about my experience and how important it is for people to be successful, to claim their history, and to not be ashamed of their history, but how to allow their history to help them honor that the way that they see the world is very unique, and that the ability to honor the way that you see the world will allow you to really compete in the world, right? And so it was exciting because in the Heroes Amongst Us, there are so many inspiring stories. And so it felt really wonderful to be included in that anthology, for sure. The thing about my story was that when I was 8 years old, I actually started thinking about mindset and being exposed to at the time they didn't have rules about visiting in the hospital, and so I would often drink chocolate milk and play ping pong with people that had alternate realities. I think that's the best way to frame that. And I wasn't afraid, because it was before shame comes closer to 10, 11, 12. Although I'm sure the ages have moved down because of social media. But the bottom line was that I didn't experience shame in that environment. I just realized that everybody's mindset was different. And so I got the sense as a very young child that reality wasn't a fixed state, right? And what that allowed me was to be a really good listener for people, and to really listen to, let me, in the language that I began to use is let me step into your reality, right? And then what that meant was that I could also step out of their reality and step into my own again, right? And so I think it was quite a miracle that that language was the language that I had, because it was a grace that I never felt that I would lose my own identity while being with people that had multiple identities, or yes, sometimes multiple identities and varying identities. And it was such a rich learning for someone so young to really kind of live in the world of reality. Reality depends on the vantage point of the person telling the story, right? And so I've been able to live my life really honoring the multiple realities that people have, and trying to be very respectful of, when I'm with a person, that I listen to the clues they're giving me about their reality, right? And there's no fear that I have of losing my own, which makes it easier to listen. I think that's one of the things that people are afraid to listen today, is they're afraid that listening will cause them to change, right? And I want to assure people that change is a choice, and that you can be with people, and you can listen, and you can learn. And I'll tell you, learning has been the biggest disruptor in my life, is that when I do listen and I do learn, I do change, and I'm so grateful. I've always changed for the better. I've always changed for more insight. And I'm eager for the change.
Great, ma'am. Very beautifully explained that change is a choice and we should change for our better. Great.
Yes. Yeah. You're very good at synthesis. I really enjoy talking to you and really hearing you reflect what I think is very, the hopefully what the most important parts of what I hope to share. So thank you for that skill that you have.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for telling me and giving me this inspiration of your life. And ma'am, also you've done a lot of work in leadership and strategy. So what is trans leadership and any important characteristic you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, so again, Strategy, Leadership, and the Soul was really a book that I think started my career as a thought leader. It was certainly a long process to get that book out, but inside it we have attributes of a trans leader. And I think if I had the chance to do the book again, I think I would call it Strategy, Leadership, and Purpose. Kobe Huberman and I, who co-wrote the book, I think we really felt that soul was the right word. But what we learned when we tried to commercialize the book, which was a commercial failure by any, like literally, I think the copies that were sold were copies where I was a guest speaker, and I actually made purchasing the book part of the process. So it was like, oh my God. And you never go to an airport, you never see it. And right now it's only available on Kindle. And so I'm a little heartbroken. You can hear that in my voice because it's a good, like what we tried to do is not tell a theory. We tried to ask great questions and show frameworks. I believe frameworks are always incomplete. And the beauty is that when you complete them through your own experience of reading the book, you actually come up with a very accurate or a more accurate picture, which is great. But we had identified what are the leadership characteristics for strategy, leadership, and the soul. And we called it trans leadership. And unfortunately, trans leadership ended up in the business world meaning trans, like transgender. And what we really wanted to point out is that trans leadership is transcending your gender and transcending your generation, right? Right now, there's 4 generations in the workforce, right? And so to lead, you can't lead as a boomer. You can't lead as Gen X. You can't lead as a millennial. You have to lead for relevance. And so you have to transcend your generation. Sometimes to lead effectively, you need male attributes. Sometimes to lead, you need female attributes. So to be an effective leader, you have to transcend your own inner bias to actually be what is the most important way to be for the being in front of me, as well as for this entity. A business is a living, breathing entity. It has a pulse, it has a heartbeat, it has a soul. And so when you think of, I think I'm thinking the word govern, but I'm also thinking of stewardship is even a better word, that when you're governing a corporate culture, it requires so much of you. And so the attributes that I think are the most important from the list of 20 that we have is the ability you have to be certain and clear, and you also have to embrace complexity. And so that is one of the paradoxes that makes you a strong leader in this particular space, right? The ability to listen is also another characteristic. So the ability, I think I'm going to state them again because they're so important, is the ability to have a sense of internal certainty in complexity, as well as just incredible listening. I think are the 2 skills that I think you can take. I think on any list, no matter how much technology changes and whatever cryptocurrency is being used at the time or whatever new currency is being used at the time, I think if you have that internal sense of certainty and are not afraid of complexity and are a great listener, you'll figure out what the new rule set is and you'll be a great no matter what.
Great. And great idea, ma'am, behind that trans thing, that how we transcend from different generation, or maybe we have to get that male or female characteristic. Great, I just loved it.
I'm so glad. So it makes sense that it feels resonant to you.
Mm.
That is something that and it seems self-evident. Like so many times, I think our job is just to name what is.
Mm.
And people will hear it and they're like, yeah, that's right. But it takes the statement. It takes someone to frame it for everything to feel less anxious. It's like, oh yeah, that's cool. I can handle that. Let's go.
Great, great, ma'am. And I'm also, in one of your articles, you have written that innovation ultimately begins on insight. So, what is the meaning of all that, like behind this statement?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I was seeing a ton about disruption, disrupt this, disrupt that. And I think a couple things. I think people are disrespectful for how much disruption truly disrupts people's lives, right? And I think there's a lot of pressure on women in particular. There aren't as many women in innovation. There aren't as many, all this other stuff. And I'm like, I think we have to be very respectful that one is that a lot of innovation comes from outliers, and they're people that see the world differently, and they're often ostracized, and they don't really have a great sense of belonging, right? And so innovation in itself is lonely. And so many people, I think, are looking at external about what needs to be disrupted. Let's look at this platform. Let's disrupt this platform. And it's like, if you really want innovation and you really want ideas, then you really have to respect the individuals. The individuals do have ideas, and they have made choices that have allowed them to be in situations where they have learned how to innovate, not because they want to be smart and clever, but because they wouldn't survive if they didn't. And so I really invite our whole community of people that are all excited about unicorns to like stop and say, if you want innovation in your culture, you're going to have to be more respectful for people and their process and the trade-offs that people make to belong to a culture, and the trade-offs that are made when people are not belonging to a culture. Disruption occurs on the inside. People that are creative no matter where they are. People that are insightful wherever they are. Give them TikTok, they will be insightful on TikTok, right? Give them any platform, they will be who they are. And I just see, companies now, in fact, all the innovation courses now, even a couple liberal arts schools in the community now have innovation course. Everyone wants to be like, be an innovator. And it's like, yeah, you want the cachet, but you don't want the commitment. The commitment requires that you honor that people are inherently insightful and brilliant, and that for them to have the courage to share the brilliance, you're going to have to create a lot more psychological safety, and you're going to have to listen a lot better. And people don't want their essence to be exploited. And so when you're asking for innovation, you're asking people to share precious jewels, and you may not be worthy of those jewels. So
Truly, ma'am, it totally depends on the individual. And as you said, we have to give respect to people to get to know what is inside them. Great, ma'am. So that was it from my side, ma'am. Anything else you want to share?
no, just that it's been super fun to see Dr. Emmett's journey, and how he went from his own journey of starting a blog and building relationships to be able to be part of a platform that's pretty much transforming India. Thank you very much. It's been a really wonderful way to start my morning.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for joining today.
It's been a great morning. Thank you so much.